Thanks for joining, guys. Thanks for your time. Basically, Bold Live sessions are intentionally designed as members-only meetups, so where we can casually discuss hot topics, evergreen business matters. And today we have Nick here from Promethean Research, and thanks for your time, Nick.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I mean, many agency professionals know about your research and the work you do. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and Promethean?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do a ton of research in the digital agency space. I've been doing this for almost a decade now. And I use all of that research to inform strategy and growth plans and go to market and all the good stuff that helps agencies grow with a little bit less friction. Like it's too hard to grow these, and I hope that this research and maybe my advice and guidance can kind of make that a little easier for shops.
Great. And I mean, because there's so much noise about around AI and how digital agencies of various types can use it to its maximum. Um, I mean, I know that it's been in your focus, and like you've from this research you gathered findings from what 268 agencies.
Yes.
Um, yeah, our team wanted to also demystify how agencies have been or are planning on using AI. So in the past year, in the following few years, and we also wanted to peek into, what the maybe, even next 5 years look into if you have some insights into that.
Yeah,
And
we can dive into
basically,
all that.
yeah, like what benefits they're seeing, like what is something that like you found super interesting from this research, and what would you say about the background of the project itself?
Yeah, I think so. There were a few really interesting pieces. I'm gonna save a few for later in the call, but I think one of the biggest ones was there's a big difference between how high performing agency leaders see AI and their expectations from AI. They're much more positive on it. They came out of the gate and they were like, "Man, this is amazing. This stuff's going to change our business for the better, and we're going to get on this and we're going to do something cool with it." And they're the ones that are historically growing faster already. They have higher margins, they have lower turnover. They're already doing really well. And then on the other side, you had the agencies that weren't doing so well. They're growing slower than average. They're not making as much money, and they're much more pessimistic on it. They're seeing this as a threat. They're seeing this as a bit of a challenge, another challenging piece to running an agency that frankly scares them a little bit. Um, and if this continues, you're going to see say the actual like productivity gains from AI do pan out, and people do figure out how to implement it really successfully in their shops. You're going to see some consolidation over the next few years in the industry. You're going to see the ones that are already doing well do even better because, as you'll learn later on, the productivity gains are massive. Um, they're going to do even better. And the ones that aren't doing well are going to have a whole host of challenges to struggle with. And it's going to thin out the market a little bit.
Mm-hmm,
So I think
mm-hmm.
that piece right there, um, that's the main takeaway from all this. Like you really, you have to look at this as an opportunity. And yes, it is another thing to have to do in the
Yeah,
long list of running an agency,
yeah.
but it's something that if you do it and you do it right and you do it well, it can help close that gap between where you are and where the highest performing shops are.
Great. So before I get on to the questions that we prepared, guys, feel free to jump in with any of your questions, and or you can wait for the end if you want to just wait for us to go through everything and then just jump in. First things first, what were basically the most commonly used AI tools and use cases seen in agencies?
Yeah. So overall, let's start there. Overall, shops are still at super early stages in implementing a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of experimentation going on right now. There's a lot of trying to figure out what tasks and what things productivity wise this is good for, and this will improve productivity versus something that somebody can write the code just as fast as writing the prompt for AI. Right now, that there's a lot of figuring out where that is. Um, So super early stages in implementing AI in general. Of the spaces that we saw, more advanced or more mature implementations was right around coding and copywriting. And I want to caution this because it's not like on the surface when we did this, it comes across and it sounds like, oh, like that's the most important one. Like if they're the farthest along implementing that, that's where they're getting the value out of it. And I really think that it was due more to the maturity of the tools and when the tools came online than it is any kind of like strategic decision on the agency leader's part to say, hey, let's go down this path and let's really focus here. If you think about it, tools like Jasper have been around for years now. Copilot, GitHub Copilot launched years ago to limited release. I think it's widely available last summer, but those tools came online.
GPT.
Yeah. So ChatGPT was something that people could use very easily for copywriting, and they jumped into it very quickly. And I think that's the reason that they're more advanced in the copywriting and coding spaces. If you look at something like we looked at video production, and that is super early. Almost no one is using it now, but you have these tools like Runway that have leaps and bounds from where they were a year ago in their ability to generate motion graphics and video. And I think you're going to start seeing, as these tools develop, you're going to start seeing that those maturity levels and those implementation levels in agencies kind of catch up with one another.
Have agency leaders already seen productivity improvements from using these tools and implementing them, or have they even really is optimizing just begun to be on their agendas, basically?
Yeah. So I specifically asked about this in the report because or in the surveys, because we had some early indication how early shops were in implementing this. So I wanted to see, like, is anybody even like getting anything out of this yet? Or is this like effort that is essentially chalked up to R&D? Like, is this just costs right now? And what we found was most shops, I wanted to say it was in the 40%. I'm not going to look through the report right now, but around 40 to 50% saw productivity gains. So even at this early level, you're already seeing almost half of the shops surveyed see productivity gains. When we asked, can you quantify that? Obviously, that's a little difficult, especially at this stage. But most of them were in the 0 to 24% improvement range. And then maybe, another half of them were in that above 25% range. So super early stages, at a lot of value delivery, different aspects of value delivery, super early in implementing it. And they're already seeing productivity gains that are pretty significant. Once they get good at it, and once they figure out how to actually implement this stuff, those productivity gains are going to be significant. So getting this experimentation stage out now and getting kind of that out of your system, that's going to help shops significantly in the long term.
Sure. And how about, like, in your report, most agency leaders perceived themselves as being below average in their understanding of AI's potential. Why do you think this is?
Yeah, that was weird to me. Everybody, and I guess it makes sense, but everybody kind of feels like they're behind the curve. I think it's partially because it's like there's so much information. Like I'm on a few newsletters that try to keep you updated on AI developments, and there's so much noise out there, and there's so much stuff that just comes out daily that it's like I'm having trouble even parsing what is important news, what is stuff that's going to actually like move the market, and what is stuff that's kind of like filler BS. And I would imagine that agency owners who are dealing with a lot more stuff are having similar challenges. So we all get this feeling like we're behind the curve on it. And it's kind of wearing on people. I think some people have just kind of turned their mind off to it, where they've been like, well, there's so much coming out, why even try?
Yeah, because like out of these 268 agencies, like close to like 89% said they were building it in. So like
Mhm.
the majority are actually feeling like they're behind, whereas it's just probably a perception that's kind of wrong because all we read in the media is like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And I
very
think that's it. I think figuring out how to parse like what is something that's going to be beneficial or important to your agency and what's kind of just noise. That filter, building that filter is super important.
yeah. And so in terms of educating employees, how important is education when it comes to AI capabilities and how should, I mean, do we have any ideas from your report? How do we have any ideas on how agencies should go about structuring employee AI education?
Yeah. So this one was super interesting, kind of in light with like right related to the last question. So we all feel like we're behind the curve.
Sure.
Um, I asked both agency owners and what they thought of their employees' capability levels. Like, do you know more about AI than your employees? Was basically what the question was. And most owners said they know more. They feel like they're behind the curve. So they feel like their employees are extra behind the curve. And then the number of people or agencies that actually implemented any kind of structured education was 20%. So you only have a fifth of agencies building out any kind of structure to solve this massive like knowledge gap issue.
Hmm.
Um, and this is stuff where specifically around value delivery, like you want that pushed to the periphery. You want the people doing the experiments to be the ones that are doing the daily work, that are doing the daily value delivery stuff, because they know their processes, where the weak points are, where AI can be helpful. They can suss that out so much quicker than a manager tinkering around with it. So what you want is some kind of, it can be as simple as a show and tell. It can be as simple as like, hey, take some time, go experiment with this, build this into your capacity and your, what you're telling them to do every week, and say, hey, take these few hours and experiment around with this. Do a quick show and tell thing, a 5-minute thing next week on it, and we'll all talk about it. We'll all discuss it. Like it can be as simple as that. That can help bubble up process improvements and different ways to use it, um, and make that experimentation go much quicker.
Sure, yeah. I mean, really, I mean, yeah, just as you said, it could be a simple show and tell. It could be a Slack channel. It can be an internal newsletter. It can be anything that where you guys can, where people can just learn from each other because really we're all either perceiving we're behind the curve or we actually are, but we're all in the learning process and of even figuring out what's important and what's useful. And so what are the main areas of gain agencies have seen so far? We said that they're using for coding, for copywriting, but are there expectations for the future mainly positive or negative? I know you mentioned that at the beginning, but maybe we can go through it again.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll talk a little anecdotally. So I did the survey work, I did the research work. I also chat with owners a lot, and
Yeah.
one that's sticking out. I was at an AI conference recently, and just chatting with somebody, and he was saying that he's seen his team be able to push out podcasts 5 to 10x faster than he could previously.
Hmm.
And that kind of stuff is insane to me, because we're talking about 20% gains, 30% gains, and what that means for an agency. And those are significant. And then you see a shop come along that's able to do quality content. Like he doesn't run like some kind of chop shop or something. Like he runs a reputable agency, and they do quality work, and they've just been able to massively increase their output with the same team size.
Wow.
So you see stuff like that. And this is it's a little bit beyond the scope of this report, but I'm working now with some other subject matter experts on an implementation guide for AI. And that's going to really try to uncover more of the how, like answer those questions of like, okay, we know AI is important. How do we actually implement it? Where should we start? How should we think about this? All that kind of stuff. So hopefully that comes out first quarter of next year. And that'll dive way deeper into a lot of that stuff.
Looking forward to that. We should do another session just to like brush up
Okay.
on the implementation.
Yeah, we could do that. That'd be fun.
Um, And what about I mean, last but not least from my set of questions, then you guys can ask whatever you want. What are the expectations, and have there been any gains in terms of profit margins? Okay, so this story that you just told is basically, they're pushing out content 10 times faster. Great. So that will bring in at the end of the day more efficiency and faster gains. But are they actually seeing profit margins go up?
Yeah. So if we look at the average profit margin last year, it was about 14% for digital shops.
Mm-hmm.
I ran some sensitivity analysis on this because I wanted to see how does that translate? How does that 20 to 30% translate to their net income and to their margin profile? Even at this early stage, keep in context, everything is still very green. There's a lot of experimentation. There's not a lot of efficiency in this. Even at that early stage, a 20 to 30% improvement, 2 to 3x's net income margins. That you can't ignore that at this point. Like that kind of stuff that grows from there, that gives you all kinds of options, right? Like that gives you pricing power. That gives you the ability to pay employees more, to grab higher, better talent. The stuff that opens up is just insane. So it's all the details are nitty gritty details are in the report. But if you can go from a 14% to a 36% margin, like that's a massive jump.
Sure. Wow. I'll remind Bold members that if they want to buy the full report, they have a huge discount thanks to your part. Dino, do you have any questions you'd like to ask? Anything that you'd like Nicholas to expand on?
Thank you. Hi guys. No, maybe just in terms of developers, like we've been experimenting with the Copilot for a while now. Developers are quite happy with it, but we haven't done any, let's say, benchmarking or reports on it. Maybe if you have some insights on, I would not say, okay, it translates to profit margins, but maybe from the quality side of things, maybe are developers that are using, let's say, GitHub Copilot more efficient at their work per se?
Yeah, so I think the efficiency is something that we've seen play out in the numbers. Like I have data showing efficiency gains. Quality is much more subjective, so that's harder for that. I kind of get just from conversations with owners who've implemented this. I think there is from the ones that I've seen do really good work, that have implemented this, they've been able to do it in a way where they're happy with the quality bar. So I have to trust that they are seeing something good enough. And it also brings up that question of what is that good enough bar? Where does that live?
Thank you.
Stepan, do you have a question? I think you had something to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Nick, I actually wanted to know, where do you see this untapped potential with AI in agency environment? So, with perhaps resource allocation or budget planning in agencies, because like we all know that AI can help creatives and developers, but there's so many areas that are not explored at this point, or at least that I know of. So I'm curious to see, what do you think could be the next big thing with AI in agency environment?
I think systematizing those kind of improvements. So obviously everybody's a little different, right? We're all running different shops. We're doing different stuff. Our value that we deliver to clients is a little different. Being able to figure out and quickly implement those kind of productivity improvements, whether it's in video creation or podcasting, like 10xing the number of podcasts you can get out or something like that. That's going to be very interesting. And that's going to be powerful for shops to do. I think as far as untapped potential, I'm not seeing a lot in agency operations. So it does seem like there's a lot in the I guess even the PM stuff, but specifically like finance, accounting, marketing, some pieces of rev gen, some sales, some biz dev. There's a ton of opportunity there that's just not fully explored yet because it's so new, right? Like you have to give time to experiment. You have to give time for this stuff to figure out what's good and what's kind of not great.
Got it. Makes sense.
Anyone else? Carlo, Thea, any questions?
Sorry, I maybe jumped in a bit later and I did not hear the start of the meeting, but I'm just wondering from the functionality perspective, okay, chatbots are something obvious in this case, and I don't know, some text generators are also obvious, but are there some new cases which you are familiar with that could come in the near future when we are talking about the usage of the AI?
Yeah, I'm seeing some interesting stuff around sales, specifically using transcriptions from sales meetings to have some prompts, multi-level prompts that will identify buying intent and how close the prospect is to being ready to make a purchase decision.
Wow.
And then also filling gaps or looking for gaps in communication. So you could say, hey, here's our value proposition. Did we hit everything in this call? Or was there anything that was missed that we need to follow up on? Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff there that it's still text analysis. It's still that kind of like chatting kind of thing, but it's stuff, it's used in a different way that's very interesting and pretty powerful for a digital shop.
Are there any like empathy analysis in this? So some AIs that could analyze the feelings of the users based on the behavior on the meeting and so on and so on?
Yeah, we're seeing some stuff. I don't believe any of it's released yet, but there are some things where they're looking at body language, at amount of time that people are talking, the sentiment analysis on the types of words that they use, all of that, and that can flow right into how that prospect feels about your engagement.
Okay, thanks.
Interesting, very interesting stuff. Anyone else? Buoyant and just came on.
I think I have another question. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I think I have another question, but it mainly relates to the common fear that we can hear in let's say layman's circles, in a sense that if I'm a creative, if I'm a designer, if I'm a copywriter or a developer, is this fear that AI is going to replace me? Does it have any validation, or is it just this new technology that we are still learning about and we are still not familiar with? And is it like the whole industrial revolution repeating itself, where people were scared that, oh, this robot will replace me? I mean, is there such a thing going on at this point?
I have seen it slow hiring. So will it take a creative's job? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know how many creatives lost their job when they went from graphic design and paper and pencil to, Adobe in the 90s or late 80s. I don't even know when that was. I was in grade school. So I wasn't paying attention then. But I think that you're gonna have hiring slow a little bit, because you do get massive productivity gains and you can serve the same client base with, the same number or with fewer people. I liken it very much to, it's a new tool. You have to get good with the new tools. Like if you said, oh, I only understand, I don't know, very early versions of CAD, and you're an engineer, and all of a sudden, new CAD comes out and you're like, nah, I don't want to learn that. Well, yeah, you kind of have to. You don't really have a choice. So if you look at it from an area of opportunity as a new thing to play around with and a new thing to get good with, I've seen creatives do some amazing stuff with it. I watched a guy yesterday that made a Hallmark-esque Christmas video just with prompt, and it was actually really good. Like you could see some fringing around the sides, you could see some stuff that was a little didn't make sense, but I think you view it as an opportunity to get good with a new tool.
Yeah, this made me think of another question, but I don't remember if you covered this in your report, or have you heard about this at your conferences that you visit or people who you talk to? Are there concerns about copywriting and who is actually the owner of certain texts or creative output?
Yeah, there's a lot of concern around that. Specifically when you work with doing kind of creative work for larger clients and for clients that have those fears where that stuff's going to be seen by millions of people. That could open them up to a lot of challenges legally. And I think I've heard some talk from various attorneys talking about like, there's not really good precedent set for this yet. There's some stuff going through, or at least there was stuff going through the courts. I don't know if it's gone through yet to give any kind of guidance around this. That's beyond my that's beyond my pay grade.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if how people are approaching this, because we all seem to be just using tools and hoping for the best.
Yeah, I think everybody is just kind of experimenting with it. It's one of those like, we're gonna try it, and if there's so many of this, hopefully it doesn't go bad kind of situations.
But also, I don't know, in terms of content, you can't really just purely rely on however good you become at prompting and inputting. You just can't rely completely on the text, because you still have a certain writing style, you have a certain tone of voice, a certain simply way of implementing a final polish of human touch, which will, I think, answer Stepan's question. I don't think it will ever be able to fully replace whatever we do at the end of the day.
Especially because it's still not so good at understanding nuances. Its tone, it's still really like almost annoyingly optimistic. It's always super happy about everything you ask it. So it's kind of like it just doesn't understand that that life is not so simple.
Yeah,
maybe it needs a harder life.
So yeah, guys, if you don't have anything else, maybe we can wrap up for the day. Thanks so much for your time, Nick. Thanks to all of you who joined, and we'll be in touch in the next day or two.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.